Whether or not you've played daily fantasy sports, you probably know about them. You probably know some of the big players. You probably know some of the smaller players now. Whether or not you've played fantasy sports, you probably know about them. It's made sports more entertaining. It makes people watch games longer. It makes people pay more attention. And it's so much fun. In today's episode, we're going to talk to Dylan Cooper from Prize Picks and talk about how a local Atlanta company is shaking up the industry and shaking up the scene, and about one company's journey from startup in Atlanta Tech Village to 600 plus employees looking over the city of Buckhead. All that and more today on the Marketing Madmen podcast.
They say marketing is a madman's game. So now we turn it over to the Marketing Madmen with Nick Constantino and Trip Job.
Hello and welcome to the Marketing Madmen. In today's episode, we are talking with Dylan Cooper, Senior Vice President of Revenue for Prize Picks, a daily fantasy sports company headquartered right here in Atlanta. Well, nothing makes me happier than talking about sports and gaming. There's a lot more to this story. Let's start at the beginning. Dylan, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good.
Let's talk about the early days. Let's talk about back in Atlanta Tech Village. Let's talk about how this all got started, because I think as important as the daily fantasy, what you guys are to Atlanta and the Atlanta tech scene and Georgia tech scene is as important to talk about.
Yeah, so our CEO, Adam Wexler, was the founder alongside Jay Duskar, the CTO. And I actually ran into Adam at a pretty random spot. He was looking for people to use his app. At the time, there were probably 5 to 10 users on Prize Picks.
Date this. Give us an idea.
This is February of 2018.
Okay, so recent. Recent.
5 years ago. So yeah, right now Prize Picks is huge, but if you rewind 5 years and 2 months, it is 5 or 10 customers on the app per day. So he's walking around looking for people to sign up for his app. He is a hustling entrepreneur, and ran into me. And I had grown up as a huge user of DFS, of skill-based gaming, on FanDuel, on DraftKings, on other platforms. And I was really interested in it and talked to him. I was honestly a bit skeptical that he really knew what he was doing off the bat, because he was hustling, he was grinding. But I went into ATV, the Atlanta Tech Village, that next week and met with Adam, met with Jay, and walked out of there kind of as the third core member of the team. And from that point on, I was the person that would put the projections up on the board, and then eventually moved into helping out with a lot of the marketing stuff. But off the bat, just a couple funny stories. I mean, it was an absolute grind. We were, again, processing 10 to 20 users a day, and they were playing via Cash App and Venmo, and just the absolute bare minimum that it took on a.
And were you at this point realizing this was something and it's time to go get funding, or are you just winging it at this point? Just like, hey, I think this idea has legs. Let's go as far as we can right now. Yeah.
So at this point, Adam had already gotten a little bit of funding, a very small amount, I would say, like in the 6-figure range. Adam was already 100% confident. I remember the first meeting I had with him. He pitched me on a rocket ship and showed me a graph, and it was just like a straight up. He's like, "This is what's going to happen." This is 5 years ago. And I was honestly more skeptical. I had been in the industry for a long time and seen how hard it was to build these companies.
Sure.
I was excited to hop on board and try something new. It was my absolute passion, so I was excited about it. But I was a bit more skeptical off the bat, and it took me about 6 months to get fully bought into it, I would say.
Yeah, and seeing it from the bird's eye view, I'm sure helped. But as you say, you're a fan of it. Explain to everybody what you love about it so much. What makes it such an engaging thing? Let's start quickly with how it works. So why Prize Picks is different. But I want you to talk about, because again, you said that passion point is something that you love doing before you even got to the company. Say why you have that passion behind it, because I think it's something that is still misunderstood by the masses.
Yeah. So. Fantasy sports in general, I have loved since I was growing up. I actually found FanDuel was the first app I found, and funny enough, I heard it from an ad on 680 The Fan. I was listening to 680 The
Fan.
Fan.
Love to hear that.
Ever since I was a kid, and then all the way up through my 20s, I listened every single day after school growing up. I was a huge sports fan, huge Braves fan, all the sports. So I heard a FanDuel ad, checked it out, and started playing on it and immediately got hooked. It's a skill-based contest, a lot of fun, and you build lineups on FanDuel and DraftKings in a salary cap format. I got
competing against other people.
Other people,
right?
correct.
That's the differentiator. You're not playing against the house. You're not playing a game. You're playing against other people, which automatically, in theory, makes the skill come in because people are different levels of expertise when you go into these things.
Yep. So yeah, I was super into that, and just I would follow the news on Twitter. I would follow every single podcast about fantasy. I was honestly more into the industry and the news than I was actually playing the game, but I was following it very closely. So,
and that was before the court case. So this is a gray area, to say the very least. This was one that was not proven yet. This court case had not happened yet, right? They're still kind of working within the parameters of the law here.
Correct. I started playing FanDuel in 2013. So, yeah, it was. I think the court cases were closer to 2017, 2018. But
is that what you like, the competitive nature of it? Are you like a research guy that just loves going in and digging into the numbers and projections? What is it about it that you love, and how does that manifest itself in Prize Picks?
Yeah, I love the research. I like to think I'm sharp at understanding stats and sports and watching the games and having an edge. So I love that. And then that led to Prize Picks. I actually wrote some articles for a couple companies on FanDuel and DraftKings back in the day. But long story short, I was really into the industry and in tune with what was going on. And then met Adam and Jay in 2018, like I said, and just a breakdown of what Prize Picks is to answer that question as well. Prize Picks is the most casual form of DFS of fantasy, where you choose 2 to 6 players. Select more or less on their projection.
So anything, assists, rebounds, whatever those things you put out are, and you're matching whatever 6 you pick versus whatever 6 someone else is picking, whoever does better on them.
No, so it's actually against the house. So it's choosing 2 to 6 players. So like, for example, you can make a lineup tonight. Who's playing NBA tonight? I was going to ask you about it, ironically. The Lakers. Let's talk about the Lakers and the Grizzlies. That's the first probably prominent NBA matchup is that one. Yeah. So I have been following more closely the Kings series, but
sure.
Lakers. So a lineup, for example, today you can make would be LeBron more than 28.5 points. I'm not sure if that's the exact one.
Sure.
I'll actually pull up my app right now.
And then you got Jaren Jackson under 25, and you're making predictions. Like, so for example, just off the top of my head, Jaren Jackson went off last game, right? The odds of him going off like that again are probably not that good. So you might in your head be like, all right, let's pick the under here. But you're picking 6 different things, and then your house is setting the line. So it's what you do versus those things in theory.
Yep, correct. Prize Picks sets the projections, and then you use your skill and select 2 to 6 players, and if they go the same way that you project, you win. You can even miss 1 or 2 on Prize Picks and still win with the flex play.
So how does the payouts work then? Is it the more you get, the better? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's 2 different payouts. There's a power play where you have to get everything right, and it's high payout. So like on 4 out of 4, you get 10 times your money on a power play.
Like a parlay, like let's call it what it is, like a parlay in betting. The more you bet, the more different lines you bet, the higher your odds go. And that's a simple statistics thing, right? You have the odds of getting all 6 of them are not high, so you're rewarding a multiplier on that. Yeah,
and then there's also a flex play where you can miss 1 or miss 2 and still win. The payout is a bit less, but
sure.
On the 6, it's 25x for all of them, 2x for if you miss 1, then 0.4 if you miss 2.
Yeah, and honestly, I love it. I've always been, I don't have time to do this stuff anymore. I just have 2 little kids and don't have time to watch the games. And I think that's what's important. Like, you got to be really aware of what's going on, right? You said the Kings, right? No one knew the Kings were in this position. No one knew De'Aaron Fox. You could say what you do. I've been saying for years, I tell Colin, one of our other sales managers, I think Sabonis was one of the most underrated players in basketball for the past 10 years. And he's probably a walking statistic for what you guys do. I mean, the guy almost averages a triple-double his entire career. So he's probably hitting a lot of those numbers. But so you have to watch the Kings to be able to make these predictions, right? You can't just go wing it. You can't read about it. You have to watch, which is why it's hard for me to do it. I just don't have time to watch anymore. But you would say NBA, we've talked in the past, NBA is probably one of your prominent sports. It fits the best for this model. It works the best, you'd say?
Yeah. I think compared to other players in our industry, NBA, we way over skew towards that. I think it's a lot of our marketing, but also, it just fits really well with the game. It's really easy to understand 25.5 points a lot easier than home runs or
for sure
hits or like it's hard to predict Mike Trout's RBIs in a game versus
and then one
LeBron's
guy
points.
could have such an impact on the game, and having those 5 guys work together, and every night the stars are going to play because especially in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm an NBA guy. I've always been, and I think it leans itself well. And honestly, NBA is not the easiest sport to bet on either. I mean, I know NHL is one of the higher bet on sports as a team sport, so this actually makes a ton of sense. We got about another minute, so. What about Atlanta do you think has been drawing so much talent in the startup space? And I know Georgia Tech's here, but what was it initially like? Was there just energy everywhere in Tech Village? Were just these startups running in all directions, like trying to come up with ideas and you're feeding off each other? Talk about that in the last minute.
Yeah, I think Atlanta Tech Village is a really cool spot. Honestly, I grew up not really knowing what being an entrepreneur meant, but just being in that atmosphere around Adam, around Jay, around everyone else at ATV. It just shows the absolute grind. I think the most important thing in an entrepreneur is not quitting. There's been a lot of times at Prize Picks where we should have quit, we should have stopped, but Adam being an entrepreneur was pushing forward. But overall, I mean, there's a lot of chances for a new entrepreneur to meet other entrepreneurs, to practice their pitches, things like that, which is awesome there.
Yeah, and that's an Atlanta thing, and you've seen it grow just unbelievably. And I think tech has a big influence there too, right? Just the you can have an idea that is technology based and have it succeed, unlike you would in other in other industries. It's really hard to come up with an invention, right? To be like, oh, I can engineer the best tire in the world and see that grow into a company. The tech, Atlanta, Georgia Tech, and that tech industry allowed to happen. So we'll continue that after the break, and you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
A lifetime of hard work. Children laughing in the kitchen. Family photos on a restaurant wall. A legacy that lives on. It all comes from the power of a conversation. Like the one Tommy Hall had with First Horizon Bank about taking over his father's Charleston-based restaurant business. Now the table is set for a whole new generation. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Tommy. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Hello and welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Today's episode, we are talking with Dylan Cooper, Senior Vice. Hello and welcome to the Marketing Madmen. In today's episode, we are talking with Dylan Cooper, Senior Vice President of Revenue for Prize Picks, a daily fantasy sports company headquartered right here in Atlanta. Well, nothing makes me happier than talking about sports and gaming. There's a lot more to this story.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Nick Constantino here with Dylan Cooper of Prize Picks. And let's fast forward a little. We talked about the beginning. Let's go now to the current day. So from Atlanta Tech Village to brand new headquarters in Midtown, glass all around. I've been up there. Great views across the board. Talk about where you guys are now, how much you've actually grown, and kind of where you fit in a marketplace that is a little bit more established than it was come 2018.
Yeah, I guess we'll start on the real estate side because you brought it up. It's surreal. We are in Midtown in Colony Square. We spent 4.5 years at ATV at an awesome location there, but it was kind of like the showing of our maturity of moving from a startup hub like ATV to a full-grown building in Colony Square. And right now we've got around 250 employees in the U.S. plus an additional 50 or so in the Philippines, and they handle a lot of the overnight trading and projections, support, settling scores, things like that.
Because that's a lot of work, man. I mean, someone's got to be looking at the games and making these things in real time. Like you can't slip up because if you leave one level of weakness and you're off with something, it's exploited quickly, I assume, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, they're fantastic employees too. I think we were a bit skeptical. I remember interviewing the Philippines employees off the rip at the beginning, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and we were pretty skeptical if they'd be able to keep up with the American employees of the same skill level, and they've been awesome. They've been really, really impressive. Love MBA, or just awesome employees.
Yeah, that's great. So what about the marketplace? So let's fast forward a little again and just say, it was a new marketplace. There was a lot of money thrown in there, a lot of money spent in advertising. There's been a lot of consolidation. So talk about how the market itself has has matured, and where you guys fit in. As if I'm right, you're one of the largest privately owned ones left, right? Like private that hasn't been bought out. That's not a big mega corporation. You're one of the last ones that is like that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are one of the top 5 sports entertainment platforms right now in the industry.
Throw out some other ones just for some context.
Yeah, I mean, FanDuel and DraftKings are the top 2. They have a sports betting product and a fantasy product. I would say they're 1 and 2 pretty clearly. I think FanDuel's 1, DraftKings 2. And I think we fit somewhere in that 3, 4, 5 range, depending on the week. But we've been top 10 in the App Store in sports for the last 1 year, including number 1 for a lot of football season this year. So that was really cool to see.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, it helps to have context, right? Because you said this was 5 years ago. That's a lot of growth in 5 years. That is a lot of stuff to keep track on, and sometimes when I see Adam, it looks like he's in crazy growth mode. Like you guys are just, it's insane to think you went from to 200 plus employees, that you're in this position now, number 1 download in the App Store. From when you were thinking about that 5 years ago, you even said at first you didn't think there was any way that was going to happen. You had to take 6 months just to get aboard the vision. So what do you think has been the key to success? What do you think you guys have done right? And that will be a good segue into what you've done to market and grow that consumer base.
Yeah, I think the strategy the whole time, and this matches very well with our brand, has been just being the easiest, simplest, most casual brand app that we can possibly be. Every single decision that we've made on the product, which I think is the most important thing for any company, has been how can we make this easier, how can we make this simpler, and that has really led us to a lot of the decisions that we've made, and a lot of them have been really right and new things in the industry that hadn't been there before.
Yeah. So let's talk specifically like user interface, user experience. I mean, I know just because it's something I do for a living and in the industry that can make or break you immediately. If it is not an easy, clean, not glitch-free user experience, you're done. So, just give an idea. I mean, how much time of a company do you spend on just making sure that user experience is as clean as possible?
I mean, that's hours and hours of work for me, for our product team, for our CTO, for everyone. I mean, it's really, really important off the rip to even have a chance. The onboarding flow of when somebody gets your app, they sign up, how easy is it for them to get through that whole flow, make a deposit, make an entry. That was something that we spent hours and hours on working on, and that's been much improved. I mean, it was a very low conversion rate off the rip, and now it's converting at a much higher percentage. So that right there alone is huge. But also just a lot of these apps right now in this industry are just really confusing. I mean, like yeah. I'm a power user, and like I understand salary cap and how everything works really well, and it's a great game for somebody like me. But if we're gonna hit the casual market,
the masses, it's
got to be just really, really easy to understand, simple, fun, approachable.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions that that stuff's not easy to get your user experience to be, because I think this is one of the things that happens to me. Like you buy a product, you're ready to go, you can do it, and then all of a sudden it's like processing error. We had an error. And it's like, okay, well, I'm Xing out and I'm not buying that because now I'm pissed off that you just wasted my time because you can't get your stuff together. But at the same time, that backend, that's SSL encryption. There's a million things going on. That does not make this an easy thing because, all of a sudden, if you're not doing that SSL encryption and your credit card gets stolen, you're going to be even more pissed off. And now everyone's going to be. So, I think it's important to acknowledge that user experience, if it was so easy, everyone would be much better at it. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but Disney Plus and Hulu are using technology that started in baseball from Baseball Advanced Media and how they streamed, because that proprietary technology, it's easier to just take something that was built already than it is to build from the ground up. So I think it's important. I think it's important to acknowledge that, like you said, that a lot of that time as a marketer, that is marketing. Your external marketing is worthless if you can't handle the inbound leads and the business coming in. So what about your actual marketing? So let's talk about some things you're doing, because I'm sure if I was a betting man, I would say the user acquisition curve probably has stopped a little bit. It's not the up high that it was. But talk about kind of that life cycle. Talk about when you're in pure user acquisition mode and then you're in client retention mode. Talk a little bit about that and how the marketing reflects that.
Yeah. I would say we're still in acquisition mode today. I think there's a lot of green grass still for us to reach out and find new casual customers. So I'm not too worried about that right now. But yeah, I mean, it's about really crafting a brand, I think first and foremost, that resonates with people. I think one other core thing on the product real quick to hop back to that is we're also trying to be the brand in this industry that is on the user side, on the customer side.
Okay.
We're helpful. So we put out a policy, a first of its kind policy called the reboot policy, where if any NBA player or NFL player gets hurt in the first half and doesn't play in the second half, you get that rebooted, which means that if you had a 6-pick entry, it would turn into a 5-pick entry because it's a huge pain point for members because there's a lot of injuries in the NFL, and it was very often that they would lose because Saquon got hurt on Sunday, stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge though. I mean, that's literally like you don't want to put it in a financial term, but you are absorbing risk here. You are taking on the risk from a client, right? From a prospective person. In theory, the risk of someone playing is part of the game. You are removing a component of risk for it to work in the consumer's favor. That is, has anyone tried to duplicate that? I can't imagine they are. If you're looking at purely a profit basis, that's a silly move. Has someone tried to duplicate it? Has the PR about it been good?
Yeah, a couple of the really small people in our specific category have, but nobody large scale has. I mean, it's 100%. It's hurting our bottom line. It's helping the member, but our thesis is that long term, having them have a great experience, having them not get screwed over by an injury in an NFL game, is going to make them play on PrizePicks longer. So we're happy to give back some money to that. I mean, it's a lose-lose situation for us from a profit perspective in the short term, but I think that's one way that we've really, as a brand, is kind of every move that we've made has been to be approachable, simple, but also to be helpful and have the users back at all times.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think sometimes that almost is like a sunk marketing cost. You know, for example, like anyone can sell pizzas if you're selling a pizza for $3, right? You can sell a lot of pizzas. That's a sunk marketing cost. So yeah, you may be losing some money, but really it's a marketing cost because now you have a better brand message to go outward with your external messaging. So talk about it. Did you market that message? Is it something you went out there with, or is it something that you just it was like a surprise and delight for your current customers? How did you make that message that you guys were offering that? Because again, it is such a new to the industry. How did you make sure everyone knew it's something you offer, or does everyone even know right now?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that's heavily marketed or heavily marketed on ads and things like that, but we did announce it on organic socials and Discord and email, places like that. I think the real value of that is when there is an injury that happens and a member is screwed over, they had a winning entry that would have won 20x or 25x or something like that, and they got screwed by an injury, and they still win because of this. That's when we earn that loyalty long term. So it's really not an acquisition tool. I don't think when a potential customer is looking at an app to play on, they're going to look at, oh, this one's going to protect an injury. Because when you make an entry, you think that you're going to win. Like you're making an entry for that reason or for entertainment or whatever. But I think it's more of a retention tool than an acquisition tool.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, let me ask you a question just while we're talking about it, because I'm kind of a statistics guy. I would bet that if you sign up and you win your first time, you're more likely to place your second bet. Is that true?
So, yes, first of all, it's an entry, not a bet. But second of all, yeah, I mean, if you win money, you're going to have money in your account. So I think you're off that alone,
you're more likely. But I think that it's like
yeah.
that hook when you go into a casino, right? When you put the slot machine, you know, the certain slot machines are rigged to go off more, make more noise. They don't win more money. They just go more often because, like, when you go to the bathroom, it distracts you when you're in points of zone. So when I lived in Vegas, I would go to UNLV to take psychology of gambling classes just because it was freaking awesome to watch.
Yeah.
So, but it's just that nature of when you win, like in a casino, when you win, it's cold and your body gets warm and stuff like that. So I'm just curious how, when you make your entry, how winning plays out. Like, do people keep going if they win? Is it something that they're looking at as entertainment? So the psychology of how that journey is for a client.
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of multiple there. I mean, there's some players looking at it for different reasons. A lot of sharps that are playing it, where they know the odds and they are making skill-based entries and are going to win long-term. So I think it depends on the member.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about that new member acquisition. So talk about some of the things you're doing to market. So we can talk about influencers here, talk about some of the tools that you're using, and talk about some of the data. I mean, I have to imagine a tech savvy company like you guys, you are tracking everything from, do they click? Do they come through? What's the retention rate? Inbound leads, all that stuff. So talk a little bit about it without getting too in the weeds. Talk about the marketing tools you use, some of the data you're capturing, and some of the real-time things you're seeing as you do your marketing.
Yeah, I can get super nerdy here, and we have an awesome director of marketing, Wyatt DeYoung, on our team that is really, really skilled at this. But again, I think it starts with brand and having the right brand, but then utilizing it across a variety of marketing channels. So we use all the normal paid channels like paid social. You'll see lots of ads if you're in a targeted state and are of the right age. For Prize Picks, I'm sure you've seen them in Atlanta. They're all over Georgia. We also...
They've gotten bigger, too. I mean, just like the looking like, right? Like being on an NBA playoff game is a lot different than being on a banner ad that pops up on a Tuesday. So you could see the scale of your advertising has grown with the scale of the business also.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, I think we started doing TV and streaming as well. So, like on Hulu and places like that about 2 years ago. That's more like upper funnel awareness. And then, yeah, like you said, influencers, partnerships. I think that's pretty unique to Prize Picks, the way that we've handled that. And that's been a really, really efficient way to acquire a large scale of customers in a really just kind of organic way where it doesn't feel like an ad.
Yep.
And it's usually we try to find people that actually play the app or will play the app and enjoy it. And then that's what's worked out really well for us is finding those people that can play the app and then just in their YouTube videos or social media, just kind of input it into that and make it a part of their normal day, normal week. And all of a sudden, all their fans, if they have 1 million fans, half of those fans start playing Prize Picks because it's a part of this influencer's day and week, and it's fun, it's entertaining.
And the barrier to entry is low, right? I mean, you can play $5 and enjoy yourself and be as engaged, and that's one of the differences, right? If you're talking, you can do all different levels of people, so you're not specifically targeting, probably affinity to sports, but I bet you there are people who, and this is a studied thing, playing Prize Picks makes them a bigger sports fan because they feel more engaged in watching what's happening. So this is a two-way street also, right?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you're playing Prize Picks, you're 100% more likely to watch the game, to listen to the radio.
And to listen to the end of the game is one of the things they always talk about because sometimes it comes down to, it's supposed to come down to the wire, right? LeBron scoring that 25th point is supposed to come down to the wire.
Yeah, I was watching last night, so we're doing a $1 million promotion right now where we're selecting one person that makes an entry will receive an additional entry to win $1 million. It's random. And the person that won yesterday and placed an entry, if you get 6 out of 6 correct, you win $1 million. So he hit his first 3. It was 2 on the Hawks game, and then he hit.
I would bet if it was unders if he was betting the Hawks. That's okay.
It was Murray on the more. Murray actually scored more than 24.5 points plus assists. I think he had a solid day. Not for Trey, but for Murray, he was good. And then Mitchell, he hit, and then Julius Randle. In that second game, we were all sweating out and cheering for him to hope to see a winner of that contest. Randall was 3 rebounds away. The Knicks were down 30, and he played all the way up until the last minute.
And he almost got hurt, man. He almost got knocked out. I was watching live. He almost got... Jared Allen went up and took him, and he actually went into the locker room, so it was scary. It's a typical Tom Thibodeau move to play your freaking guys. Anyway, I digress. Keep going.
It was not. Yeah, I mean, he should have been playing at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
He didn't play until the 7-minute mark, and then he played all the way down to the 1-minute mark, which made no sense. But long story short, they were down 30, and this guy was sweating $1 million if Randall could get 3 more rebounds or assists. Unfortunately, couldn't get it in those last 7 minutes, but. It was an awesome sweat for him and for us to cheer for a millionaire.
So that guy knew in that moment that he was in the running for this thing, for $1 million.
Correct. So
wow.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there, and it was 3 rebounds. So he's like, keep him in, Thibodeau. He's calling him on his phone, just keep him in. Wow, that makes it so much cooler. And how engaged, I mean, it'd be cool to see like video of this guy just jumping up and down while this is happening.
Yeah. No, we don't have a video of him live, but I think we're going to try to get a video of him today. So he hit 4 out of 6. So he still won, I think, $16,000 for the flex play. So we'll get a video of him today for.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, he was. I think he placed an entry for $5, and then was selected for the extra entry because of that.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense, and that's great, man. I mean, that's one. Just the chance of doing that increases someone's likelihood to play, because now you're talking about big time money and you're talking about that kind of lottery thing, right? This is random. Anyone that can play can be this. So most people are not offering that kind of incentive for a $5 placement on anything. So that's awesome. Go back to a second to influencers. So to talk about who that influencer would be. Talk about who that is. Are you scouring YouTube channels to find these people that are really into sports and reaching the right target audience? Talk about who the influencer is, how you select them, and then what mediums you use. So is it paid placement? Or is it product placement? How are you using those influencers? Because I think this is applicable to a lot of industries, and I still think it's something that's very misunderstood.
Yeah, I think this is the future of marketing. We've seen this with millennials and Gen Z customers. That 21 to 35-year-old range tends to follow influencers a lot more than above that, and that's kind of been our target demo, is really dominating those casual customers in that space. I think it starts for us, first of all, with the people that already are in our space. So people that already are playing fantasy, are in the sports gaming vertical. We have a couple really good deals and awesome partners with people in our space that just really get bought into it, which makes it that much more worth it. Like, they might only have 100,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok
but that's where
Twitter.
It's at nowadays. You don't want the 5 million, from what I understand.
Well, you want both.
The micro influencer, and it's just more because it feels more authentic. And like if it's somebody who's always out and always pushing this stuff, you kind of got to the point where it's being sold and it's things. So those mid-level, call it 30 to 100,000, 200,000, those are where a lot of time and money is being spent. It's not micro influencer because I see the value there, but I don't think that is applicable to certain things. But as you look at those influencers, one of the things I've always been taught is the only problem you have with influencers is you're fine until the next thing comes out. That it's because it's such a, it's what's in front of me. I don't imagine that to be a problem because there's not a lot of competition anymore that you're really going against. But talk about how that's an acquisition tool. But once they're in the funnel, then there's a different mechanism to keep them there, right? So those influencers, that is acquisition. That is getting them in the first time. You've worked your user experience to be so good, so you keep them there, correct? So that's an acquisition tool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the influencers are both. Like, we're generally not signing a 1 month deal or a one ad read on a video. Like, that's not really the way we think about it. We think about it more long term. And usually, the influencer either will come to us and say, I already play Prize Picks. There's been so many famous people that have hit us up and say, I play Prize Picks. Can I be a partner? Like, that happens every single day.
Wow.
Of like massive name people. I don't know if I can share any specifics, but like there's rappers who play
mostly out of Atlanta or nationwide.
Wow. I mean, there's a couple in Atlanta, but they'll play on Prize Picks. A couple of like very big name rappers, and they'll ask like, "Hey, can we also push Prize Picks and get and do that?" And we'll be like, "Yeah, I mean, like that's the best influencer, someone that already uses the app."
Yeah, I mean that's unbelievable. I know, when we've worked in the past, it always works better when somebody that's speaking on your behalf uses it regularly, because there's something to be said about casually turning it on and like, I can speak about the game last night and oh my goodness, I just missed out on this much by this. Like, that just makes it more, because again, part of life is feeling like you always have a chance, right? You don't ever want to do something that there's really no chance. And again, it's not a shot at the lottery, but like, if you play the lottery, the odds are just, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning while riding a shark than winning the lottery. So you want to have that feeling of, look, anybody can win at any time. That's, I think, the hype, and that's what makes it so good. I think that's great. So in you dealing with these influencers, can you give any advice to listeners and how to deal with them and how to look for them? And, I know obviously be authentic and make sure they use it, but anything else, because it is such a new phase. And I think you're right. Marketing is going to go there. I think if you want to target a millennial and even the Gen Z and all those audiences, it's something you have to be cognizant of. But I think most people are still afraid of it. I think they're afraid they're wasting money. I think they're afraid that the costs aren't there. Any advice you would give to listeners?
Yeah. So we have a team, I think it's 7 deep right now on our partnerships team, that is out scouring the internet. And I think the most important thing is get people in that audience. So like, what do they watch? Who's big on TikTok right now? Who's big on YouTube right now? For us, one of our largest partners is Milk Boys, who I personally had never heard of them. They're massive, and it was someone that like a lot of people on our partnerships team watched, enjoyed, and So we started working with them, and they've been an awesome partner for us. So it's really about finding people that you watch, you connect with, and like it fits in with the brand.
Yeah, and as you watch that in real time, I mean, you're seeing these interactions happen in real time, and you're diversified, right? It's like anything else. There's got to be a different couple, probably different industries, different ages. I imagine it's probably a more male skew, but that means there's more females that are open to be playing it. If you can start capturing those, you're great. Right, so I think it's like anything else. It's about diversifying, and you need a real-time dashboard and a lot of people to be out there scouring, looking, adjusting in real time. So that's great. I mean, at first it's been congrats on the growth and where you guys are, because again, for me, seeing that commercial in that NBA game, it just shows how far you come. Because I understand that that's not something that just everybody does, and it looked good. That's the other thing. You do see it sometimes, but it's like a car dealer and it goes to like the box, it's not letterbox, and you're like, oh my god, how did they just let that happen? But yeah, when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the future, where you see things going, and we'll have some fun with that. So you are listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
This morning in North Carolina, wheels are spinning. Determination is winning. A passion is now a thriving business, and it shows no signs of slowing down. How? The power of a conversation, like the one Clint Spiegel had with First Horizon Bank about starting a bike wheel manufacturing facility in Asheville. Now it's not just talk, it's rubber meets road. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. If you're enjoying this conversation, subscribe on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube, download the podcast, like us, leave a review. Those are all the best ways to make sure your favorite podcasts are being listened to and shared. Let's go back, Dylan. So let's talk about the future. So we did kind of by accident. We did a past, a present, and now let's do a future. We're gonna do a Christmas story here. So let's talk about where you see the industry going, where Prize Picks fits in, and kind of what to look out for over the next couple of years. So before we at the break, we were just talking about this. I think you guys are in a pretty unique position. I think that because of the scale and size you are, because you're independent, because your strict motives are to drive more people to this platform for daily fantasy, I think you're in a unique position. I think that as sports betting, legalized sports betting, becomes legal in more places, I think that a lot of companies will probably gravitate towards that, which opens up the opportunity, because I do believe that there are more people that would be interested and are interested in what you are doing than necessarily placing sports bets. I think that barrier to entry of it's $5 you can enjoy, you're placing multiple things as opposed to one game. I think that at its core, gambling and betting and those things are meant to be addictive, which could also be a little scary. So talk about the future as how you see as sports betting becomes more of a common thing, where you guys fit in and where you see growth opportunities moving forward.
Yeah, so I think looking back to the past a little bit, people in that, again, 21 to 35-year-old range grew up projecting players. They played on ESPN Fantasy. They had season-long teams for football, for basketball. If not that, it was FanDuel and DraftKings and salary cap. That was huge growing up as well in your 20s. So I think the future of everything, of any kind of sports entertainment gaming, is going to really gear towards players. And I think Prize Picks is set up really well for that, being only players and really being the premier place to have any action on players across the country right now. So I think.
So you're saying versus the teams themselves, okay.
So I think honestly, like more action maybe shifting towards fantasy than before. Like as people grow up and get older and start to get in that 25-year-old range and start to have disposable income, they're used to playing fantasy and having action on players and less so on teams. So I think that's really our focus right now is
And that's why basketball leans itself so well, right? I've always been told baseball is about the home team, the NFL is about the league, the NBA is about the players. Like, you'll go to watch LeBron. It doesn't matter what team he's on. If he's away, if you're home, you're going to go watch him. Where for the NFL, you'll watch any NFL game that's on. But for MLB, most likely you know your local team. I mean, I joked for the longest time, no one knew who Freddie Freeman was for 10 years of his career. Now he's on the Dodgers and he leads it. But they didn't, because the Braves were not good and he was the first baseman, and it just did not spread as far out. The baseball is not built that way. I mean, most casual fans, how many MLB players do you think they can name? 4, 5 at the very most? Yeah. But NBA, anyone can probably name 7 or 8 of those guys just because of the nature of being a superstar. So I think that makes even more sense why NBA lends itself so well to what you guys do. What about future plans? I mean, other sports, other events. I mean, I know there was a big thing, and I knew it was dead on arrival, but they were going to. Vince McMahon was trying to get it to be able to make certain bets and entertainment things on WWE, which is insane because it's already predicted, but it already knows what's going to happen. But do you venture out? Do you have other verticals that you can go to? What about that growth also?
Yeah. So I mean, the question we get asked all the time is, are you eventually going to get into sports betting? And from what I'm hearing right now, it seems like the answer in the immediate term is no. We're not. It's not something that we're considering. We want to stay as clearly defined in the skill gaming as possible, and honestly start to build more skill-based games around fantasy, around like we have so many ideas of other ways to implement a Prize Picks as product in fantasy, with peer-to-peer, with not peer-to-peer, with lots of different options there. But I think long-term, everything's on the table for us. I mean, we're growing a massive base of customers that love our brand and Prize Picks and have an action on players.
Give it an idea of scale. What's the size of your mailing list? How many people can you reach at any moment if you needed to? If you wanted to go out with a message, how many people can you reach at any given moment? It's not even active users. I'm just saying, how many people can you go out and reach?
7 figures.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's great. That gives an idea of scale, and that's all I ask. It doesn't need to be active players. You don't need to share how much money people are spending, but I'm just curious of because that gives that idea of scale. I mean, whenever you're talking into 7 figures, that is an exorbitant amount of reach, especially for somewhat of a niche industry, right? We always talk about it as sports fans, like, oh my God, everyone watches. Most people don't even know the Braves started playing baseball yet, right? Until they go to a game or the summer comes and kids are out of school, most people don't even know. Like, even if you look at the Super Bowl, yeah, it's 150 million people, but that's still not even half the country. So
that's crazy.
We talk about numbers. I mean, the Masters, for sports fans, is the biggest thing in the world. 10 million people watch the Masters. Okay, there's 350 million people in this country alone. So again, just scale is always important. I think personally that having the ability to not have to leave your core competency must be a nice feeling because it lets you focus on what you're good at. I think the market has set you guys up really well to succeed because the market might be distracted with chasing other things and going into it, which allows you guys to be innovators. I think that your ability when you came out with your policy about if a guy gets injured, I think things like that are things that will go appreciated. I'm glad you got to share it with people here because I think the more people hear about things like that, going into inflationary times and recession and whatever the heck we're involved in, no one is doing things like that. It is all, how do you screw people without letting know you're screwing them the best? Let's call it what it is, right? Shrinkflation is a great example. You maybe not charging more for something, but you're putting 8 ounces less in it. Like, you're still charging more for something. So I commend you guys for what you're doing. I think that the platform has room to grow, and I think you are positioned uniquely to succeed. Congrats to Adam and all of you guys on the new building and the growth potential. Let's end with this. You got about a minute and a half. I am John. I am 20 years old. I am at Georgia Tech, and I want to start an app. I want to start something. What advice would you go backwards and give to yourself that I would give to John about how to pursue and how to move forward?
I think I actually know somebody named John that's 20 years old at Georgia Tech, so I will talk.
That's a pretty good chance, right? That's a pretty good chance.
And I think he is into entrepreneurship as well. And yeah, I'm actually speaking to the startup group at Georgia Tech tomorrow night, so I need to prep some slides on
just
this
play
exact
back this
topic.
episode, bro. Just play back this exact episode.
Yeah, as long as it's ready for tomorrow. Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is just be ready to grind and fight the ups and downs. I mean, there are so many times where we should have quit as a company. In my mind at the time, where now looking back, it's like I'm so glad that we pushed forward in hindsight. So I would say be ready for that, and then I would say just start. Like, there's not really a better time to do it. Everyone's kind of waiting for, I need to have a couple years of experience in the real world before I start something. Like, no. What I've seen from a lot of successful entrepreneurs is they start in college, in high school, And they might fail on their first 1 or 2 startups, but that's where you get that experience of learning what happened when you failed. And I think it's not saying that a path of working in an industry for 5-10 years and then doing it is wrong, but I've seen a lot of the best entrepreneurs that have that skill of fighting ups and downs and grit do it because they've learned from 5 or 6 failures in the past.
Sure. I agree with you. I think that the trick is that you have to wake up one day and be, all right, this is over. This failed. You can't keep pushing failure because that's when it's going to make it harder to come back from it. And I think that you should be prepared to fail, to learn from the mistakes and don't make them twice. So I think that is sound advice. What else? What about the lifestyle? What about, just innovation, creativity? Talk about those things in the last 30 seconds. What advice would you give someone there?
I mean, lifestyle-wise, you should be prepared to not make any money for a couple of years on your salary or at least a very small amount of income. So if that's not for you, then I would not be in this entrepreneur.
Ramen noodles. All right, that's been awesome, dude. I appreciate the time. Check them out. Give them your handles. How would someone find you guys? I'd say it's everywhere, but let's pretend we don't know.
Yeah, if you haven't seen an ad or an organic social for Prize Picks yet, we are at prizepicks.com, Prize Picks in the App Store, Prize Picks across everything. And then me personally, I'm not super public, but I've got a Twitter, Dylan Cooper 32 on Twitter.
You hear that, ladies? Did you hear that? So, all right, my man. I appreciate it. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 with Dylan Cooper of Prize Picks.
This morning in the Atlanta airport, no one's missing a meal on Mac Wilburn's watch. With 11 restaurants to serve passengers, he's got dining for every destination. And it all started when Mac talked with First Horizon Bank about opening a franchise in the airport. Now it's open for business and cleared for takeoff. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Mac. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.